"81 years, 305 days ago, a spunky little redhead, Velma, joined the Hall family, which included an older sister, Rula, and her former school marm mother, Alice, and a jack-of-all-trades farming father, Ira. Born just 8 days before the big stock market crash of '29, Velma's formative years coincided with the Great Depression. In spite of lost farms, meager possessions, and precarious economic times, her sharp intellect, nurturing nature, and tenacity counterbalanced life's trials, and she grew into a responsible, caring, perennial optimist. Describing her family life in Mom's own words, she said, "We had a blessing on our food every meal, and we all ate at the same time. We had family prayers prior to breakfast and supper, kneeling at chairs turned away from the table. We were expected to carry out our given responsibilities to the very best of our abilities. It didn't matter whether it was a talk for church or a household task. The same effort was expected. Father, as we called him, worked long, hard hours to provide for us. We always had horses, cows, chickens, pigs, and sometimes ducks, geese, or turkey, which required daily attention prior to beginning the field work required to raise row crops. Irrigation was also a daily job. Alfalfa hay, grain, and pasture were every year crops. Corn, sugar beets, potatoes, or beans might be the other row crops. They were all labor intensive. Somewhere around age 5, Mom became convinced that she needed to eat the sparkling icicles dangling outside from the roof. So, hanging over the roof's edge, she methodically detached the icicles and dropped them into the waiting arms of her 3-year-old brother, Kimball. To her dismay and frustration, he dropped or missed every one. Way to go, Kimball. As one might expect, Mom soon followed the icicles and fell. She was concussed, sustained a broken nose, and multiple bruises and contusions. She managed to walk to the house where Grandma was sewing, tapped her on the shoulder before losing consciousness. Her survival was in doubt for several days, and the results of these early injuries affected her for the rest of her life. This incident demonstrates several key characteristics of her character. Mom loved natures and all its beauties, whether it be a dazzling icicle, a beautiful sunset, garden flowers, a majestic mountain range, or sparkling mountain stream. She would set goals, tasting that icicle, getting an education, raising a family, making art, or remodeling, with a determination and drive that she inherited from Grandpa Hall, and the kindness and understanding she got from Grandma Alice. She set out to obtain those goals, no matter the difficulty, time, or personal cost. Mom was 4 when they lived at the rice place between Elba and Malta. A nearby canyon had a creek that provided the family drinking water. The water was only about 4 to 5 inches deep and had a big cedar tree right by the road. The water was clear and cold. One night after Mom and Billy were sent to bed, they went out the back window, and I know a number of grandchildren and great-grandchildren who would do this very same thing. You'll be interested to know that Grandma had this in her personality. So Rula and Grandma went out the back window and spent some delightful time crawling in the ditch in their nightgowns. Boy, did they have fun. When Grandma and Grandpa found them, they were in big trouble. Later that same night, they had some visitors who had children their age, which was a rare treat. However, because of the water escapades, they were not allowed to play with them, a frustrating but natural consequence. As second child of 10, Mom learned early the time-honored values of cooperation, family chores, both indoor and out, ingenuity, and pursuing a task to completion. Living during the Depression, she developed her natural organizational tendencies and a sensible, no-nonsense approach to life. Mom always loved art and decided to make her own charcoal. She and Rula decided to test it out on Selecta's face. Grandma Hall had taken Lois and Julia to town for a preschool doctor visit. When she returned to take Selecta in for her visit, it took considerable scrubbing to get Selecta ready to go. While Selecta was none too pleased about that aspect of the venture, the charcoal did indeed work. During their teen years, Mom and Rula would go to work in the fields in Wendell for 50 cents an hour. One day they needed to get to the fields, and Rula proposed they take the family car, a 35 Plymouth. This presented a temporary setback, as neither of them was tall enough to reach the pedals. But with Rula handling the steering and Mom on hands and knees behind her, manning the gas and brake, they set out. All was proceeding nicely until the highway turned north, and they met another car, literally. A woman jumped out of the passenger side and started screaming that they were in big trouble. A truck driver stopped and told the other driver it was his fault. The woman didn't say another word, and they left. Rula and Mom limped back home in the overheated car and counted themselves lucky. Education was always important, and Mom completed her senior year of high school at Albion Normal School. She and her friend Meredith Kurtz were the only two graduates that year. Mom spent another 2 years at Albion and earned her teaching certificate. She and Rula lived in Comish Hall, and Grandpa and Grandma Hall provided $15 a month for them. Don't you all wish you could provide $15 for them? The rest of their living expenses were covered by hashing in the cafeteria. To hash meant that they were in charge of a specific set of tables. Using a large old tray, Mom on one end and Rula on the other, they would deliver meals and then clean up afterwards. In the dormitories, they cleaned the bathrooms, and in the classrooms, they cleaned the erasers and blackboards. It was during those years at Albion that Mom met her future blue-eyed husband, Robert Forney Vaden. Dad also worked in the cafeteria and noticed the cute redhead long before she realized he was even alive. Shortly after that, after they began to see each other, Mom informed Dad that she would only continue to date someone who could take her to the temple, and Dad began to investigate the church. Mom graduated in 1958 and got a job teaching 3rd grade at Gooding. She was thrilled because for the first time she was able to buy everyone in her family presents for Christmas. On May 26, 1949, she and Dad were sealed in the Idaho Falls Temple. They made their home in Richfield, where they lived in a 12 by 20-foot house. In February, Randall Robert was born in Wendell, Idaho. During that time, her younger brother Lewis came to live with them. One day, while Dad was working at the sawmill and Mom was out doing the irrigation, Lewis was in the small house washing dishes. That's what a guy's supposed to do, you know. And Randy, not quite one, was in a little jumper in the middle of the room. Lewis saw something moving and was startled to see a small rattlesnake headed behind the door. It slithered into a paper sack that was filled with more paper sacks. Lewis scooped Randy out of the jumper and headed outside. When Mom returned and learned about the snake, she marched into the house, grabbed the bag, and shook out the snake. She used her irrigation shovel and tried to behead it. The shovel was too dull. After several failed attempts, she held the snake pinned with a shovel, reached into a drawer, grabbed a knife, and lopped off its head. Talk about the proverbial mother bear instinct. After that, they moved themselves and the little 12 by 20 house several times. Gordon Hayes was born in Wendell on March 4th, 1952. Soon thereafter, they pulled up stakes and moved to a delightful place on 5 acres with indoor plumbing and a water heater in Cottage Grove, Oregon. Dad worked the late shift in the sawmill while Mom tended 2 small active boys. Mom loved it there. She often described the lovely greenery and climate and the friendly people, and was sorely disappointed when a year later they moved back to a basement apartment in Idaho. For the next 5 years, Dad worked at various places, and they moved several times. Karen Kay, the smartest, brightest, most beautiful child, was born on November 13th, 1953. Roberta, the most strong-willed, feisty, and then this is in here, just what I better put in something after I gave my plug, was born on September 9th, 1955, and Zane came along February 22nd, 1957. All 3 born in Jerome, Idaho. Whew. 5 children in 7 years. In her typical practical manner, Mom adeptly established a tidy house and tended to the varied needs of 5 rambunctious children. At a similar stage in her life, Grandma Hall was asked how she managed to handle 5 children. She replied, "With each child, you learn to love more." That was the case with Mom. I heard Mom say on more than one occasion, "I would just get used to 1, and then there were 2. When I got used to 2, there were 3. After 3, it all became easier. Those of you that know, I'm number 3. I don't know what that. Mom wasn't just a master of understatement. She was the consummate mother, and family always came first. In August of 1957, with 6-month-old Zane and 4 more lively children in tow, they set out for San Francisco, California, where Dad worked at Factory Mopar as a parts man until March of 1963. Misty, the California red-headed girl, was born May 27, 1962. We lived for 3 years in a 4-story row house on Homestead, a typical steep San Francisco street, which made for exciting street parking as well as thrilling tricycle and bicycle rides for us children. Mom worked toward her degree and completed further education classes at night at nearby California State. After 3 years, we moved to the nearby suburb of Daly City on Larchmont Street, Little Larchmont Street. These were exciting times indeed. Not only was Misty born in 1962, Halloween trick-or-treating resulted in multiple massive bags of candy that were then organized, we are talking about Mom here, organized and doled out a piece at a time for months.